Take that fake uniform off before someone real sees you wearing it. Officer Bradley Haynes said it loud enough for the whole entrance of Westbrook Mall to hear, and the Saturday crowd slowed like traffic hitting black ice. Marcus Reed stood beside the curb with one hand still holding a small pink bakery box, the other raised halfway in the air, calm, open, empty. The December wind moved across the parking lot, carrying the smell of hot pretzels from inside the mall and wet asphalt from the morning rain. Behind him, 9-year-old Lily Reed clutched a glittery shopping bag against her chest, her eyes fixed on the old navy blue cap Bradley had just snatched from her uncle's head. The cap was faded at the brim, softened by years of sun, salt, and hands that had folded it during funerals no one talked about. Across the front, the small gold letters read Navy SEAL. Bradley looked at those letters like they offended him. He turned the cap in his hand, gave Marcus a slow once-over, and let out a short laugh. "You expect me to believe this is yours?" Marcus did not answer right away. His jaw tightened once, not in anger, but in the way a man tightens a door against a storm. He was 6 feet tall, broad through the shoulders, wearing a plain charcoal jacket, dark jeans, and boots with the soles worn thin at the heels. Nothing about him begged for attention. Nothing about him asked for applause. He had come to the mall because Lily wanted a strawberry birthday cake with white frosting roses, and because he had promised her he would never miss another birthday if he could help it. But now shoppers were stopping near the glass doors. A teenage boy lifted his phone. A woman with a stroller paused beside the holiday display. 2 mall security guards watched from 10 yards away, uncertain whether to step closer or disappear into the automatic doors. Bradley's patrol car sat along the red-painted curb, lights flashing silently, blue and red washing over Marcus's face like cold water. "Officer," Marcus said quietly, "my identification is in my wallet. My military card is there too. Let me show you." Bradley smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "No, I know how this works. People put on a patch, buy a hat online, and hope nobody asks questions." The sentence landed harder than the wind. Lily's fingers curled around the handles of her bag until the paper bent. Marcus glanced back at her, and the look in his eyes changed. Not fear. Not shame. Protection. He shifted slightly, placing his body between Lily and the growing circle of strangers, as if even silence could have edges sharp enough to cut a child. Bradley stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound personal, while still letting the nearest phones catch every word. "Real heroes don't stand outside malls pretending to be something they're not." Marcus looked down at the cap in Bradley's hand. For 1 second, the parking lot vanished behind his eyes. The glass doors, the holiday music, the smell of cinnamon sugar, all of it slipped away, replaced by heat, sand, rotor wash, and the weight of men whose names were carved somewhere quiet. Then he came back. His voice stayed low. "You don't know what that patch cost." Bradley's expression hardened, as if calm offended him more than resistance ever could. He reached toward Marcus's wrist and guided his hands behind him, not roughly, but with the kind of public control meant to make a man feel smaller. The metal cuffs clicked in the cold air. Lily made a tiny sound, the kind a child makes when she is trying not to cry because she thinks crying will make things worse. The bakery box slipped from Marcus's hand and landed sideways on the pavement. Inside, the cake pressed against the lid. One white frosting rose crushed flat. Bradley held up the cap for the crowd like evidence. "Stolen valor suspect," he announced. "Possibly impersonating military personnel." Marcus closed his eyes for half a breath. When he opened them, they were steady. Lily bent down, picked up the ruined cake box with one hand and reached for the fallen cap with the other, but Bradley pulled it away before she could touch it. "Stay back," he said. Lily froze. Marcus's shoulders lifted with one slow breath. "She's a child," he said. "Then teach her not to lie for grown men," Bradley replied. A hush moved through the people watching, uneasy now, heavier than curiosity. Somewhere inside the mall, a Christmas song kept playing through hidden speakers, bright and cheerful and completely wrong. Marcus did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He only looked at Lily, standing there under the flashing lights with tears shining on her cheeks, and gave her the smallest nod he could manage. It meant breathe. It meant don't run. It meant remember who you are, even when someone else forgets. And while Officer Bradley Haynes turned toward his patrol car, Certain he had just exposed a fraud, he never noticed the small worn card tucked inside Marcus Reed's wallet, printed with an emergency number that did not ring at a local station, or a county office or anywhere ordinary at all. The small card in Marcus Reed's wallet had been given to him 7 years earlier in a room with no windows, no photographs, and no applause. It was not shiny. It was not framed. It did not look important enough to change the temperature of a parking lot. It was the size of a credit card, its corners softened from years of staying tucked behind his driver license, beside a folded picture of Lily missing her 2 front teeth. On the front were only 3 lines. Department of Defense Emergency Verification, a secure phone number, and Marcus Reed's name printed in plain black letters. He never showed it unless there was no other choice. Most of the time there was no need. Marcus had built his life around disappearing into normal things. A small apartment above a closed tailor shop on Maple Avenue. A night security job at a shipping warehouse by the interstate. Coffee from a gas station at 4:30 in the morning. Church on Sundays when his back did not ache too badly. He owned 2 suits, one for weddings and one for funerals, and the second one had been worn far more often than the first. People in town knew him as quiet, polite, a little hard to read. The kind of man who fixed a neighbor's loose porch rail without asking for money. The kind who carried groceries for elderly tenants and left before they could thank him too much. The kind who never mentioned that some of the scars under his sleeves had come from places most Americans would never be allowed to pronounce in public briefings. To Lily, he was simply Uncle Marcus, the man who cut her pancakes into stars and checked under the bed for monsters even though she was old enough to pretend she did not believe in them. That morning, he had picked her up from her mother's apartment just after 10. The sky was low and gray, with cold rain still clinging to the gutters. Lily had climbed into his old pickup truck wearing a purple coat, white sneakers, and the serious expression of a child carrying birthday expectations. She wanted a cake from the bakery inside Westbrook Mall because, according to her, grocery store cakes tasted like cardboard with confidence. Marcus had laughed for the first time all week. He had promised her strawberry filling, extra frosting roses, and tin candles because 9 felt too small for the kind of year she had survived. Her mother, Marcus's younger sister Denise, had been sick again, sleeping through treatments that made her bones hurt and her voice thin. Marcus never told Lily how worried he was. He only tightened her seatbelt, turned the heat up, and let her choose the radio station. At the mall, he parked near the east entrance because his left knee had been stiff since dawn. Lily noticed, of course. Children notice pain adults tried to hide. She walked slower beside him, pretending to look at window displays so he would not have to hurry. Marcus knew what she was doing, and loved her for it without saying so. Inside, the mall smelled like cinnamon, coffee, and new clothes. Families moved under bright ceiling lights. Teenagers crowded near the sneaker store. A man in a red sweater rang a charity bell by the entrance, and Marcus dropped $5 into the bucket, even though he had counted his cash twice before leaving home. Lily saw the bill go in and whispered, "That was cake money." Marcus leaned down and said, "There is always room in the budget for mercy." She did not fully understand, but she smiled anyway. They bought the cake. They stopped at the toy store long enough for Lily to admire a stuffed dolphin she insisted looked brave. Then just outside the doors, while Marcus adjusted the bakery box in his hand and reached for his keys, Officer Bradley Haynes stepped into their path. The officer had not seen the morning that came before. He had not seen the careful way Marcus counted money, or the way he slowed his steps for a child pretending not to protect him. He had not seen the folded funeral programs in Marcus's glove compartment, or the names Marcus still whispered when sleep would not come. Bradley saw only a black man in a worn jacket, a faded Navy SEAL cap, and a place where Bradley believed certain people did not belong unless they were working, cleaning, carrying, or leaving. That was where the trouble began, not with the cap, not with the uniform, not with the law. It began in the narrow space between what Bradley saw and what he had already decided Marcus Reed must be. Officer Bradley Haynes had spent 12 years learning how to make a room change when he entered it. He liked the small signs of control. Shoulders straightening, voices dropping, hands coming out of pockets before he asked. At Westbrook Mall, people knew him before they knew his name. Store managers nodded too quickly. Teenagers stopped laughing when his boots crossed the tile. Even the private security guards, with their soft uniforms and plastic radios, stepped aside when his patrol car rolled up to the red curb. Bradley told himself that was respect. He had built an entire life around that word. Respect for the badge. Respect for order. Respect for the line between people who belonged and people who needed to be watched. His father had been a deputy in a county 2 hours west, the kind of man who kept his uniform pressed so sharply it looked like it could cut paper. Bradley grew up hearing that authority was only useful if people feared losing its approval. He carried that lesson into adulthood like a second badge, polished by habit, hardened by pride. By his mid-30s, he had become the officer local business owners requested during holiday weekends, when the mall filled with crowds, noise, and small mistakes waiting to be punished. He was not the highest-ranking man in the department, but he behaved like the street itself answered to him. That afternoon, he had been parked near the east entrance writing a report about a shoplifting complaint that had already been handled by mall security. The rain had stopped, but droplets still clung to the windshield, bending the world into broken streaks of gray. Bradley had been annoyed before Marcus ever appeared. Annoyed by the traffic. Annoyed by teenagers crossing against the signal. Annoyed by the charity bell ringing near the doors. Then he saw Marcus Reed walking out with Lily beside him, the bakery box balanced carefully in one hand, the faded cap resting low on his head. Bradley's eyes caught the gold letters first. Navy SEAL. His mouth tightened. He had seen veterans before, real ones in his mind at least. They looked a certain way, spoke a certain way, carried themselves in a way Bradley believed he could recognize from across a parking lot. Marcus did not fit the picture Bradley had already built. The jacket was too plain. The truck keys too old. The child beside him too ordinary. The man himself too calm. So Bradley stepped out of the patrol car and made his decision before asking the first question. That was the part no report would ever admit. Mall security guard Tom Alvarez saw it from near the sliding doors. Tom had watched Marcus enter earlier, had seen him drop money into the charity bucket, had seen Lily laugh at the bakery counter with frosting samples on her sleeve. Nothing about them looked suspicious. Nothing about them looked threatening. When Bradley called Marcus over, Tom moved a few steps closer, but the officer gave him one sharp look, and Tom stopped. That was how Bradley worked. He did not need to shout at everyone. Sometimes one glance was enough to remind people that interfering could become its own problem. "Where did you get the hat?" Bradley had asked. Marcus had answered. "It is mine." Not defensive. Not arrogant. Just plain. That calm answer irritated Bradley more than any excuse could have. He wanted nervousness. He wanted stammering. He wanted the man to perform guilt so the scene would make sense. Instead, Marcus stood there with steady eyes and a child behind him, and the silence around them began to gather witnesses. Bradley felt the crowd before he fully saw it. Phones rising. Faces turning. A small audience forming at the edge of his authority. And in that moment, instead of slowing down, instead of asking for identification, instead of letting the truth arrive quietly, Bradley chose the version of himself he trusted most. The hard one. The certain one. The one who never backed down in public, even when something in the air began to warn him that he might be wrong. Marcus Reed knew the shape of a dangerous moment long before it became loud. It was in the way people stopped moving but did not leave. It was in the way a crowd pretended to be concerned while making room for a better view. It was in the small tremor in Lily's breathing behind him, the sound she made when she was trying to be brave because she thought bravery meant being silent. He wanted to turn around and kneel beside her. He wanted to tell her that this was not her fault, that grown men sometimes built cages out of assumptions and called them rules. But the cuffs were already around his wrists, cool against his skin, and Officer Bradley Haynes had positioned himself between Marcus and the simple truth sitting in his wallet. "My identification is in my back pocket," Marcus said again, each word measured, clear enough for the phones recording from the sidewalk. "You can verify everything in less than 2 minutes. Bradley gave a short laugh and looked toward the bystanders as if Marcus had delivered the punchline for him. "That is convenient," he said. "Every fake has a story and a card." Marcus did not rise to it. He turned his head slightly toward Tom Alvarez, the mall security guard standing near the glass doors. "Sir, you saw us inside. You know we were not bothering anyone." Tom shifted his weight. His hand tightened around his radio. He looked at Lily, then at Marcus, then at Bradley. For 1 second it seemed like his conscience might win. "Officer, they were just at the bakery," Tom said carefully. "I did not see any disturbance." Bradley's face changed by only a fraction, but the air felt colder. "I did not ask what you saw," he said. Tom lowered his eyes, and Marcus felt something heavier than anger settle in his chest. Not surprise. He had seen good people step back before. Fear could make honest men quiet. Pride could make cruel men louder. Lily took 1 step forward, holding the damaged bakery box against her coat. "He is not lying," she said, her voice small but clear. "That is my uncle's hat." Bradley looked down at her, and for the first time Marcus's calm nearly cracked. Not because of the officer's badge. Not because of the crowd. Because Lily was looking at a man with authority and asking him to see the truth, and Marcus already knew what it felt like when authority refused. "Lily," Marcus said gently, "stay by the doors." "But Uncle Marcus," she whispered. "It is all right," he said, though nothing about it was. Bradley lifted the faded cap again, turning it so the gold letters faced the nearest phone cameras. "This is not a toy," he announced. "This is not something people get to wear because they want attention." Marcus stared at the cap. He remembered the first time it had been placed in his hands, not in celebration but in silence. He remembered a room filled with men who did not clap because some names had just been read aloud and some chairs would stay empty forever. That cap had sat on hospital blankets, motel nightstands, church pews, and the passenger seat of his truck on mornings when grief rode beside him. It had never been a costume. "Officer," Marcus said, softer now, "you are holding something that belongs to people who are not here to defend it." Bradley's jaw tightened. "Do not lecture me." "I am not lecturing you." Marcus lifted his eyes. "I am asking you to do your job." The words landed cleanly. Too cleanly. A murmur passed through the crowd, not loud enough to become support, but enough to remind Bradley that everyone had heard. His pride stiffened like a locked door. He stepped closer to Marcus, lowering his voice. "You do not get to tell me how to do anything." Marcus looked past him at Lily. Her cheeks were wet now, but she was standing straight, the ruined cake box pressed to her heart like a shield. "Then let the documents tell you," Marcus said. "Reach into my wallet." Bradley held his gaze for a long second. Then he turned toward the patrol car, guiding Marcus with him. The blue and red lights kept flashing across the wet pavement, across the crushed frosting inside the box, across Lily's white sneakers planted on the curb. And somewhere behind the glass doors, the charity bell kept ringing, bright and thin, as if mercy were still trying to be heard over the noise of power. By the time Bradley guided Marcus beside the patrol car, the crowd had grown thick enough to change the sound of the parking lot. It was no longer just tires whispering over wet pavement or shopping carts rattling near the curb. It was murmurs, phone cameras, small gasps, and the uncomfortable silence of people deciding whether they were watching justice or something pretending to be justice. Marcus stood with his wrists held behind him, shoulders squared, chin lifted just enough to keep Lily in sight. He could feel the winter air slipping under the collar of his jacket. He could feel the cold press of metal, the weight of eyes, the old ache in his left knee beginning to pulse from standing still too long. But none of that reached the place Bradley was trying to touch. That place was deeper. That place had names. Bradley opened Marcus's wallet with the careless confidence of a man expecting proof of his own belief. A driver license appeared first. Then a warehouse employee identification card. Then a folded grocery receipt. Bradley smirked and held the plastic sleeves toward the crowd as if ordinary life were evidence against a person. "Security guard," he said. "That is what it says right here. Not special forces. Not hero. Security guard." A few people looked away. Tom Alvarez swallowed hard near the doors. Lily's face tightened. Marcus did not answer. He had learned years ago that some people did not ask questions to hear the truth. They asked because they wanted the truth to kneel before their opinion. Bradley kept searching. His thumb stopped on the bronze challenge coin tucked into a worn pocket behind the cards. He pulled it out and turned it under the flashing lights. The coin caught a streak of blue, then red, then gray sky. On one side was an insignia Marcus had not looked at closely in months. On the other side, a date was etched. so small most people would miss it. Marcus saw it anyway. His breathing changed once. Bradley noticed and smiled. This too, he asked. Let me guess. Bought it at a flea market. Marcus's eyes lifted slowly. The parking lot seemed to narrow around that coin. It had belonged to Commander Elias Boone, who used to keep peppermint candies in his vest and send handwritten birthday cards to every child in the unit's families. Boone had pressed that coin into Marcus's palm after a mission they were not allowed to discuss, smiled through exhaustion and told him, "Read, when the noise gets loud, stay decent." 3 months later, Marcus had stood under a folded flag while Boone's wife held herself together with both hands. Now Bradley was turning that memory between his fingers like a cheap souvenir. "Put it back," Marcus said. Not loud, not threatening, just lower than before. Bradley tilted his head. "Now he cares." "Put it back in my wallet," Marcus repeated. Something in his voice made the nearest bystanders stop whispering. Lily looked at her uncle as if she had just heard a door open inside him, one he usually kept locked. Bradley held the coin up higher. This is exactly how stolen valor works. A hat, a coin, a few serious lines, and suddenly everyone is supposed to believe you are somebody. Marcus stared at him, and for the first time that afternoon, pain showed plainly across his face. Not the kind people could film and understand. The quieter kind. The kind that came from seeing the dead handled by someone with clean hands and no reverence. "I never asked anyone here to believe I was somebody," Marcus said. "I asked you to check." Bradley's smile faded for half a second, then returned sharper. "I am checking." "No," Marcus said. "You are performing." The word settled between them like a match dropped near gasoline, though Marcus's voice stayed even. Bradley stepped closer, his pride now fully awake. "Careful." Marcus looked at the coin again. "That belonged to a man who did more for this country before breakfast than you have done with that badge all day." The crowd went still. Even the phone seemed to stop moving. Bradley's face colored, not with shame yet, but with the anger of a man whose stage had turned against him. He put the coin on the hood of the patrol car instead of back in the wallet. The small metal circle clicked against the paint. A tiny sound, almost nothing, and somehow it hurt more than shouting would have. Lily moved before anyone could stop her. She stepped past the bakery box on the ground and reached for the coin, her white sneakers leaving damp prints on the pavement. "That is his," she said. Her voice trembled, but she did not retreat. Marcus turned sharply. "Lily, stay back." She froze, but her eyes stayed on Bradley. "You are wrong about him." Bradley looked down at her, then at Marcus, then at the crowd. He had a choice then. Everyone did. He could have breathed. He could have read the card. He could have become smaller for one honest second and let the truth enter. Instead, he picked up Marcus's wallet again and pushed past the emergency card without reading it, too determined to find proof of guilt to recognize proof of honor. And behind him, on the wet hood of the patrol car, the old coin sat under the flashing lights, carrying a dead man's name into a silence that was growing harder for everyone to ignore. The quiet did not arrive all at once. Came in pieces. First, the laughter near the entrance faded. Then the whispers thinned. Then even the phones seemed to lower by an inch, as if the people holding them were beginning to feel the difference between recording a scene and standing inside one. Marcus Reed stood beside the patrol car with the winter wind moving across his face, and the old coin resting on the wet hood a few feet away. Officer Bradley Haynes still had the wallet open in his hand, but his thumb had paused over the plastic sleeve where the emergency card waited in plain sight. It was there. White background. Black letters. A number that did not belong to any local office. Lily saw it before Bradley did. Her eyes narrowed through tears, not because she understood what the Department of Defense really meant, but because she had seen that card before years ago, tucked beside a photograph of her uncle in a hospital bed with a blanket pulled to his chest and a smile too tired to be real. She remembered asking him if the card was magic. Marcus had told her, "No baby, it is just for grown-up emergencies." Now, standing under the flashing lights, Lily decided this was exactly what grown-up emergencies looked like. "Officer," she said carefully, "that card is important." Bradley did not look at her. "Step back. It has a phone number." "I said step back." Marcus turned his head. "Lily." His voice held warning but also tenderness. the kind that tried to wrap around her before the world could. She looked at him, and for 1 second they were no longer in a parking lot. They were at her kitchen table while her mother slept in the next room, Marcus teaching her how to dial emergency contacts, how to speak clearly, how to give a name, a location, and one fact at a time. He had taught her because he believed children should know how to find help. He had never imagined she would need that lesson for him. Bradley shifted the wallet, and the emergency card slipped partly free, falling against the open fold. Lily stepped closer just enough to read the first line. Department of Defense Emergency Verification. Her lips moved silently around the words. Tom Alvarez saw it too. His face changed. Officer, Tom said more firmly than before, you might want to look at that. Bradley's jaw tightened. Everybody suddenly wants to do my job today. He pushed the card back with his thumb, but the motion only made it slide out farther. It fell from the wallet and landed near Lily's shoe. No one moved. The tiny card lay on the damp pavement like something too small to carry so much consequence. Lily bent down and picked it up. Her fingers shook, but she held it with both hands, careful not to smudge the printed number. Bradley reached out. Give that to me. Marcus's voice came quietly. Lily read the number. Bradley froze. The crowd froze with him. Lily looked from the officer to Marcus. Uncle Marcus, am I allowed? Marcus swallowed. He looked tired suddenly, older than he had looked minutes before, as if the past had stepped close enough to touch his shoulder. Yes, he said. One fact at a time. Lily pulled her small phone from her coat pocket. The case was purple, cracked near one corner, decorated with a sticker of a brave-looking dolphin. She pressed each digit slowly. The parking lot held its breath between the beeps. Bradley took one step toward her, but Tom Alvarez moved too, not blocking him, not challenging him, just standing near enough that Bradley would have to choose what kind of scene he wanted the crowd to witness next. The call rang once, twice, 3 times. Marcus closed his eyes. Rainwater slid from the edge of the patrol car hood and struck the pavement in soft, patient drops. The old coin gleamed under the red and blue lights. Somewhere behind the mall doors, the charity bell kept ringing, thinner now, almost distant. Then a woman's voice answered, crisp and awake, as if she had been waiting beside the phone. Department of Defense Emergency Verification Line. State the service member's full name. Lily gripped the card harder. Marcus Elijah Reed, she said, her voice trembling but clear. We are outside Westbrook Mall. A police officer thinks he is lying. There was a pause on the line. Not confusion. Recognition. The woman's tone changed, and in that change the air around Marcus seemed to shift. Stay on the line, young lady, she said. Do not hang up. Lily looked at Marcus. He gave her a nod so small almost no one else could see it. Bradley looked from the phone to the card to Marcus, and for the first time that afternoon, certainty left his face. It did not leave loudly. It drained slowly, like color from a winter sky. 3 minutes had not passed yet, but something had already begun moving toward Westbrook Mall, something larger than Bradley's pride, larger than the crowd's silence, larger than the mistake he was still refusing to name. The woman on the phone asked Lily to repeat the location, then asked whether Marcus was safe, and that question alone made Officer Bradley Haynes look up sharply. Safe was not the word he expected from a government verification line. Suspect maybe. Impersonator maybe. But safe carried weight. It made the handcuffs sound louder without moving at all. Lily stood beside the patrol car with her purple phone pressed to her ear, the emergency card held flat against her coat like a tiny shield. Yes, ma'am, she said. We are by the east entrance. There are red doors. There is a bakery inside. My uncle is standing next to the police car. The woman's voice softened by half an inch. You are doing very well. What is your name? Lily Reed. A pause. Lily, I need you to listen carefully. In a moment, another line is going to contact the officer on scene. Do not move away from your uncle unless he tells you to. Can you do that? Lily looked at Marcus. His face was calm, but his eyes had changed. Not afraid. Not relieved. More like a man hearing footsteps from a hallway he had locked years ago. I can do that, Lily whispered. Bradley reached for his shoulder radio, suddenly impatient with the silence. Dispatch, this is Haynes at Westbrook Mall East entrance. I need confirmation on a Department of Defense number a child just called from a card. His voice tried to sound bored. It failed at the edges. The radio crackled. Then nothing. Along nothing. The crowd felt it. Tom Alvarez felt it. Even the woman with the stroller stopped rocking it back and forth. 3 minutes can be nothing when a person is late for coffee. But standing in a cold parking lot while truth moves through secure lines, 3 minutes can become a lifetime. Bradley checked his phone. No signal problem. He checked the wallet again, finally reading the name on the card as if the letters had changed while he was not looking. Marcus Elijah Reed. Former service number printed beneath it. Verification status pending. Bradley's mouth tightened. This still does not prove anything, he muttered, but he said it more quietly now. Marcus looked at the coin on the hood. A drop of water rolled across its edge and fell away. It will, he said. The radio suddenly came alive with dispatch, but the dispatcher's voice had lost its usual flat rhythm. Officer Haynes, stand by for direct federal contact. Bradley blinked. Direct what? Before dispatch could answer, his department-issued phone began ringing. The screen showed an unfamiliar Washington, District of Columbia number. The ringtone cut through the parking lot so sharply that several people flinched. Bradley stared at it for 1 second too long, then answered. Officer Haynes. The voice that came through was not loud, yet it carried through the cold air because everyone had stopped breathing loudly enough to hear it. This is Colonel Rebecca Shaw, United States Department of Defense. You are currently detaining Marcus Elijah Reed. Confirm that he is unharmed. Bradley's eyes flicked toward Marcus. Colonel, we are investigating a possible stolen valor situation. No, Officer Haynes, she said. You are detaining a decorated former Navy SEAL, whose service record includes classified operations you are not authorized to review. The words struck the crowd like a door closing in a courthouse. Someone lowered a phone. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." Bradley swallowed. With respect, ma'am, anybody can carry a card. The line went quiet. When Colonel Shaw spoke again, her voice had gone colder. Anybody can carry a card. Not anybody has my direct line attached to their emergency file. Not anybody is listed in restricted recovery logs. Not anybody carried me out of a burning convoy outside Kandahar while refusing evacuation until every civilian interpreter was accounted for. Marcus closed his eyes. Lily turned toward him slowly. She had never heard that story. Not once. To her, her uncle had always been the man who made pancakes, fixed loose cabinet handles, and pretended not to cry during old gospel songs. Bradley's face had begun to change in small, helpless ways. His certainty was still there, but it was cracking, and behind it something pale was showing through. Colonel, he said, I did not have that information. You had his wallet, she replied. You had his card. You had his request to verify. What you did not have was patience. The sentence did not need to be shouted. It moved through the parking lot clean and exact. Marcus opened his eyes and looked at Lily first, not Bradley. Baby, he said softly. Put the phone down now. Lily lowered it, but she did not hang up. Colonel Shaw continued, each word measured. Remove the handcuffs. Secure his identification and personal effects. A federal liaison is already on the way. Until they arrive, you will treat Mr. Reed with the respect his record has already earned and your badge should have given him before you knew who he was. Bradley looked at the cuffs, then at Marcus, then at the crowd. For the first time since the scene began, he seemed to realize that everyone was no longer watching Marcus. They were watching him. Bradley Haynes did not move at first. His hand stayed near the cuffs, his face caught between command and consequence, as if his body had not yet received the truth his ears had heard. The parking lot had gone almost perfectly still. Red and blue lights kept sliding over wet pavement, over the crushed bakery box, over the old challenge coin on the hood, but the scene itself seemed to hold its breath. Marcus Reed waited without turning around. That was the part that made the silence heavier. He did not demand. He did not humiliate. He did not use the sudden power of Colonel Shaw's voice to make Bradley smaller. He simply stood there with his shoulders squared and his head slightly bowed, as if patience were a discipline he had learned the hard way. Officer Haynes, Colonel Shaw said through the phone, remove the cuffs now. Bradley swallowed. The sound was small, but the nearest people heard it. He stepped behind Marcus and unlocked the cuffs with hands that were steadier than his face. The metal opened with 2 quiet clicks. Marcus brought his arms forward slowly, flexing his fingers once. Red marks circled his wrists, faint but visible in the cold. Lily saw them and pressed her lips together. Marcus saw her seeing them. Immediately, he lowered his hands to his sides, hiding nothing, but refusing to let the marks become the center of her memory. Bradley picked up the wallet from the hood and hesitated before offering it back. Marcus accepted it with a nod. No sarcasm. No victory. Just a nod. That made Bradley look worse than any insult could have. Tom Alvarez stepped forward and carefully picked up the challenge coin. He held it in both hands like he understood now that it was not just metal. "Mr. Reed," Tom said softly, "I am sorry I did not speak sooner." Marcus looked at him. For a moment Tom seemed ready to be judged. Instead, Marcus took the coin and said, "Next time, do." Tom's eyes dropped. "Yes, sir." The title landed differently now. Not forced. Not fearful. Earned. Bradley stood beside the patrol car, still holding his phone. Colonel Shaw had not hung up. "A federal liaison will arrive shortly," she said. "Until then, Officer Haynes, your supervisor has been notified." Bradley's mouth opened, then closed. For once, there was no sentence strong enough to rescue him from what he had made public. A white department sport utility vehicle turned into the mall entrance first, moving slowly past the holiday banners. Behind it came a dark sedan with government plates. The crowd parted before either vehicle reached the curb. Captain Melissa Grant stepped out of the police vehicle, her coat half-buttoned, her expression already set by whatever call had pulled her from a Saturday afternoon. From the sedan came a man in a navy overcoat who showed credentials to no one except Captain Grant, because he did not need the crowd to know his name. He only needed the process to begin. Captain Grant looked at Marcus, then at Lily, then at the cuffs now hanging uselessly from Bradley's hand. Her face tightened. "Officer Haynes," she said, "step away from Mr. Reed." Bradley did. It was the first order all afternoon. He obeyed immediately. The federal liaison spoke quietly with Marcus, confirming his name, his card, his emergency contact, and nothing more than the public was allowed to hear. Then he turned to Captain Grant. "His status is verified." Those 4 words passed through the parking lot like a verdict. A woman near the stroller covered her mouth. The teenage boy who had been filming lowered his phone completely. Someone whispered an apology, not to Marcus directly, but into the cold air, as if shame needed somewhere to go. Captain Grant faced Bradley. "Badge and duty weapon." Bradley stared at her. "Captain, I was acting on suspicion." "You refused verification when it was offered," she said. "You escalated a public encounter without cause. You ignored a witness. You dismissed a child. You made this department answer to Washington in front of half the city." Each sentence was calm. Each one removed another piece of the authority Bradley had worn so loudly minutes before. He handed over his badge first. It looked smaller in Captain Grant's palm than it had on his chest. Then he surrendered his department equipment as instructed, his movements careful, his face pale beneath the parking lot lights. Lily watched without smiling. Marcus watched her watching, and that mattered more to him than Bradley's punishment. He stepped closer to her and gently took the ruined cake box from her hands. The frosting had smeared against the cardboard lid, the roses flattened, the pink filling leaking through one corner. Lily looked up at him. "I am sorry about your cake," he said. She shook her head, tears finally slipping free. "I am sorry about your hat." Marcus looked toward the cap, which had fallen near the curb during all the confusion. The brim was damp. A line of mud marked one side. He walked over, picked it up and brushed it once against his jacket. Then he placed the challenge coin back in his wallet, carefully, reverently, as if returning someone home. Bradley stood a few feet away, stripped of the stage he had created, looking not like a monster, but like something almost worse, an ordinary man forced to see the damage of his own certainty. Marcus could have said many things then. The crowd expected something. A speech. A condemnation. A final blow made of words. Instead, he looked at Bradley and said only, "The badge was supposed to make you responsible, not louder." Bradley's eyes dropped. No one clapped. No one cheered. The justice of the moment did not need noise. It settled over the parking lot in the space where arrogance had been quiet, cold, and undeniable. The first thing Marcus Reed did after the parking lot went quiet was kneel in front of Lily. Not because he was weak. Not because the day had broken him. He knelt because she was 9 years old, and no child should have to look up at pain for too long. The wet pavement darkened the knee of his jeans, but he did not seem to notice. He held the ruined bakery box in one hand and his damp cap in the other, and for a moment all the uniforms, badges, phones, flashing lights, government plates, and embarrassed faces faded behind the simple shape of a man trying to make a child feel safe again. "Look at me, baby," he said softly. Lily looked, though her chin trembled. "You did exactly right." She shook her head. "I was scared." Marcus nodded. Courage is not the opposite of being scared. Courage is what you do while your hands are shaking. Lily wiped her face with her sleeve, leaving a small streak of frosting across the purple fabric of her coat. Marcus saw it and smiled just enough for her to breathe again. Behind them, Captain Melissa Grant was speaking in a low voice to the federal liaison. Officer Bradley Haynes stood near the patrol car with his hands empty now. His badge gone from his chest, his certainty gone from his face. No one was filming anymore with the same hunger. The crowd had changed. Curiosity had become discomfort. Discomfort had become understanding. Understanding had become something almost like respect. Tom Alvarez came back from inside the mall carrying a clean paper bag from the bakery. He stopped a few feet away, unsure if he had earned the right to come closer. "Mr. Reed," he said, "the bakery manager wants to replace the cake. No charge." Marcus looked at the crushed box in his hand. The frosting roses had collapsed into streaks of white and pink, sweet and ruined and strangely small compared with everything else. He handed it to Tom. "Tell her thank you," he said. "But we will pay." Tom opened his mouth, then closed it. Marcus's voice stayed gentle. "Kindness is not charity when it comes with respect. Let us keep the respect." Tom nodded, and this time he understood enough not to argue. Lily slipped her hand into Marcus's. Her fingers were cold. He covered them with his own. Colonel Rebecca Shaw's voice came once more through Lily's phone, still connected, still present like a witness from far away. "Mr. Reed," she said, "it is good to hear you breathing." Marcus looked down at the phone. His throat moved before he answered. "You too, Colonel." There was a pause, full of history neither of them would explain in a mall parking lot. "Boone would be proud of you," she said quietly. Marcus closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, the shine there was not weakness. It was memory. "He would tell me I should have bought the cake before the trouble started." Colonel Shaw gave a soft laugh, the kind people make when grief and affection sit at the same table. "That sounds like him." The call ended soon after, not with ceremony, but with a promise that paperwork would follow and that Marcus would not have to carry the burden alone. Captain Grant approached him then. Her face had softened, but her posture remained official. "Mr. Reed, I owe you an apology on behalf of this department." Marcus looked at her, then at Bradley, who still had not lifted his eyes. "Make it matter after today," Marcus said. "Not just for me." Captain Grant nodded once and there was no performance in it. Bradley finally stepped forward half a pace. His voice when it came had lost its sharp edges. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I was wrong." Marcus studied him. The crowd leaned toward the moment without moving. Lily held tighter to her uncle's hand. Bradley swallowed. "I saw what I wanted to see." Marcus did not rescue him from the truth. He did not punish him with it either. He only said, "Then learn to see better." No one spoke after that. The words did not need company. A few minutes later, Marcus and Lily walked through the glass doors of Westbrook Mall. Warm air touched their faces. The smell of cinnamon and coffee returned. The charity bell was still ringing near the entrance, bright and thin and stubborn. Lily looked up at Marcus as they passed the bakery lights. "Are we still getting 10 candles?" Marcus squeezed her hand. 11, he said. "One extra for bravery." She smiled then, small at first, then real. Outside, the rain began again, soft enough to blur the flashing lights reflected on the pavement. Bradley stood beneath it without his badge, watching the black man he had tried to shrink walk away taller than anyone in the parking lot. Marcus did not look back. He adjusted the damp cap on his head, held Lily's hand, and stepped into the warm noise of ordinary life, where honor did not need to shout and justice for once had arrived quietly enough for everyone to hear.